The living room of Cora Vance's house smelled of old wool and dried lavender, and, beneath both, the wood smoke of 60 years embedded so deeply in the walls it had become part of the structure. Nora Vance was 29 years old, sitting in the second row of folding chairs on a Tuesday afternoon in February, while the estate attorney read her grandmother's will. Cora had died 11 days ago at 87. The reading had drawn 8 family members. Diane Vance Howell sat in the front row with a legal pad and a pen that had not stopped moving since the attorney began. She was 56, Cora's eldest, and she had the forward-leaning posture of a woman who considers her presence in the front row a form of stewardship. Nora did not have a legal pad. She had her hands folded in her lap and the stillness of someone who had spent 3 years sitting in this room listening, which is a different quality of attention than the kind that take notes. The attorney read in order. Diane received the house, its contents, the vehicle, and the primary checking account. 2 cousins received jewelry and furniture, itemized by piece. Nora's mother received the china set. Then the attorney reached Nora's name, to my granddaughter Nora Ellen Vance, who came every Sunday, and never once checked her phone while I was talking. I leave the contents of the root cellar, the document box in the upper left kitchen cabinet, and the item described in the sealed envelope attached to this document. The attorney slid a small envelope across the coffee table. Inside was a single rusty iron key on a length of red string and a notacard in Cora's handwriting. This opens the only door I never showed anyone. You'll know the one. You always paid attention. Nora closed her hand around the key. It weighed almost nothing. Diane looked at the key, then at the notacard. Her expression did not change, but the pen moved against the legal pad with the deliberate pressure of someone recording something they intend to act on. The reading ended. Nora retrieved the document box from the upper left kitchen cabinet, carried it to her car, and opened it with a bobby pin from her glove compartment. She was an archivist. Archivists know how to open things. The gas station parking lot smelled of cold asphalt and exhaust, and the particular February stillness of a town where nothing moves after 6. Nora laid the document box's contents across the passenger seat in the order she removed them. The way her training had taught her to handle anything old and irreplaceable. Methodically, without rushing what deserves attention, 7 items, a hand-drawn map of the root cellar, precise and unhurried, with a location marked in red ink, plastered over, 1961, grey paint, southwest corner. Look at the floor, not the walls. A folded letter in Cora's handwriting, dated 3 weeks before her death. Nora set it aside for last. A savings account statement from the Laurel County Federal Credit Union. The account was in Nora's name. The balance was $114,000, accumulated in deposits across 23 years. The earliest deposit was dated the year Nora turned 6. A photograph of a woman she did not recognize, young, perhaps 30, seated at an embroidery frame before a window, her work spread across her lap. Nora looked at it for a long moment. Her professional work included textile documentation. What she was looking at in this photograph was not a hobby. The density of the stitchwork, the complexity of the pattern, the deliberate visual intelligence of the composition. She had seen work of this quality in 3 institutional collections and nowhere else. On the back, in Cora's hand. My mother, Ruth, 1938. She made 41 of them, a deed to a 7-acre parcel in Laurel County, filed in Cora's name in 1962, never consolidated with the house property, a business card from the Kentucky Folk Arts Center in Moorhead. On the back, Cora's handwriting, "Call Margaret. She has been waiting," and a notacard, "The credit union account cannot be touched by the estate. It was always yours. I opened it the year you were born. Because I knew what kind of person you were going to be. I was right." Gran Nora picked up the letter she had saved for last. She had read the first paragraph when her phone rang. Diane. She let it go to voicemail and listened immediately after. Diane had been reviewing the estate inventory. The root cellar had not been properly assessed. Someone would be there Thursday morning. It would be helpful if Nora returned the document box, which was part of the estate contents. Nora looked at the noticard. Then she started the car. Thursday was 2 days away. The root cellar was 20 minutes from where she was sitting. The root cellar smelled of cold earth and old clay, and the sharp mineral edge of limestone foundation running beneath this part of Laurel County like the spine of something ancient. Nora pulled the cord. The single bare bulb came on. Cora replaced it every spring without fail, one of the quiet maintenances she performed before anyone noticed it needed doing. The cellar was 12 feet by 16, shelved on 3 walls with the preserved goods of decades, mason jars of tomatoes, green beans, apple butter, arranged in the abundance of a woman who understood that scarcity was never entirely past. The floor was poured concrete painted gray, smooth from 60 years of foot traffic, uniform in every direction. Nora stood with the map in one hand and her phone's flashlight in the other. Look at the floor, not the walls. The southwest corner floor looked identical to the rest. Gray, painted, smooth. She crouched and moved the flashlight across it at a low angle, looking for texture rather than color. Nothing resolved. She put her palm flat on the concrete and began moving it slowly toward the corner. She found it with her hand before her eyes understood what her hand had found. A seam, rectangular, 3 feet by 2, where plaster had been worked into the concrete and painted over so many times it had become nearly flush. Nearly. The plaster sat fractionally higher than the surrounding concrete, perhaps a millimeter detectable only to a hand moving deliberately across a surface with the trained patience of someone who spends her working life finding things hidden in plain sight. She scratched the center with her thumbnail. The gray paint flaked away. Beneath it was a keyhole. She inserted the rusty key. The lock resisted with the specific friction of old mechanisms remembering their function. She applied both hands, steady and patient. The lock released. She lifted the edges of the rectangle with her fingers. The door swung up on iron hinges that groaned once and then moved freely. The smell that rose from below was cedar and old cloth, and the irreplaceable smell of fiber preserved correctly for a very long time. A smell Nora recognized from institutional textile archives and had never expected to find beneath a root cellar floor. Stone stairs descended into the dark. She went down. The stone room smelled of cedar and old textile fiber and the specific mineral dryness of limestone that has been managing moisture through the spaces between its stones for 80 years without assistance. Nora ducked at the entrance. The ceiling was 6 feet, no more. The walls were dry-laid limestone, fitted without mortar in the way of the oldest construction in this part of Kentucky. The floor was packed earth covered in burlap, the most recent layer clean and pale, replaced within the past few years, which meant Cora had been down here recently. In her 80s, still coming down the stone stairs to tend to something she had kept secret for 60 years. Along the left wall, on cedar-lined shelving built directly into the stone, the textiles were stored, wrapped in acid-free cloth. Not Ruth's original storage from the 1930s, but updated and maintained, the wrapping replaced at intervals across decades by the same hands that replaced the burlap on the floor. Nora counted them without deciding to. 41 pieces. She carefully lifted the wrapping from the nearest one. She had documented textile collections in 3 states. She had handled Depression-era work in institutional archives, university collections, and private estates. What she was looking at, a large decorative panel, hand-embroidered, botanical and geometric patterns interweaving in a visual language that belonged entirely to one person's mind, was not comparable to anything she had encountered outside a museum. The thread colors had been preserved by the cedar and the limestone air in a vividness that had no right to exist after 80 years. The density of the stitchwork was extraordinary. The invention was extraordinary. Nora set the panel down carefully and sat back on her heels and stayed there for a moment without moving. Along the right wall, bolted to the stone, was a fireproof steel document case. Inside, the 7-acre parcel deed original with a survey attached. A 60-year ledger in Cora's handwriting, every private financial decision from 1962 to 2021 recorded in the methodical detail of a woman who kept her own accounts because she did not trust anyone else to keep them honestly, and a letter on 4 pages of Cora's good stationery. The letter explained Ruth, who she was, how she worked, why she built the room. It explained the land. I bought it with my own money before I understood that marriage meant other people's hands in your accounts. I kept it separate because those 7 acres were mine and then would be yours. It explained the credit union account and the specific morning Cora opened it. You were 6 years old, and you sat in this kitchen and asked me what my mother's name was and actually waited for the answer. I knew then. It ended. The textiles belong in a place that will take care of them. Margaret will know what to do. The land and the money belong to you. I spent 60 years making sure of it. Nora was sitting on the burlap floor with the letter in her hands when her phone buzzed. Her cousin Elaine. Diane has someone coming Thursday morning. She called them a specialist. It's about the root cellar. I thought you should know. Nora looked at the 41 textiles on the cedar shelves. Diane did not know about the stone room. Her specialist was coming for the mason jars, but Diane was moving toward something she did not yet understand, and Thursday was 1 day away. Nora called Margaret at the Kentucky Folk Art Center. Margaret Ellison picked up the direct line on the second ring and said, before Nora had finished her name, "You found the room." She had been acquisitions director at the Kentucky Folk Art Center in Moorhead for 19 years. Cora had contacted her in 2019 with photographs of Ruth's textiles and a written description of the collection's condition and provenance. Margaret had driven to Laurel County that October and spent 4 hours in the stone room with a flashlight and cotton gloves. The following spring, she and Cora had signed a provisional acquisition agreement, witnessed, notarized, legally binding, donating all 41 textiles to the center's permanent collection upon Cora's death, with Nora named as the authorized representative to execute the transfer. The agreement gave the Folk Art Center legal standing as an interested party in the collection's disposition. No executor, no family member, had authority to redirect or sell the textiles without the center's consent and Nora's signature. Diane could inventory the root cellar on Thursday morning. She could send 10 specialists. The textiles were already spoken for. Then Margaret told Nora something Cora had not put in the letter. In 2021, the Smithsonian American Art Museum had contacted the Folk Art Center regarding Ruth Vance's work. 3 pieces from Ruth's documented output had surfaced in a private collection sale that year and drawn significant institutional attention. The Smithsonian's folk art curator had been attempting to locate the primary collection for 2 years. The current estimated institutional value of 41 Ruth Vance pieces, Margaret said, was between $380,000 and $520,000. The Folk Art Center's acquisition was a donation. Nora would receive no cash from the textiles, but the donation generated a federal charitable deduction valued at the collection's appraised worth. Margaret's institutional attorneys were prepared to document and file it. Applied across 5 years, The deduction would eliminate Nora's tax liability on the credit union funds entirely. Cora had not simply left Nora money. She had structured the gift so that the money arrived whole. Then Margaret's attorneys reviewed the 7-acre parcel deed. Nora read them over the phone. The parcel description included a drainage easement across the house property's southern boundary, filed with the deed in 1962, running in Cora's favor for 62 years, transferring to Nora with the parcel at Cora's death. Diane could not develop, sell, or subdivide the house property's southern acreage without Nora's written consent. Cora had bought 7 acres in 1962 and said nothing for 60 years. And those 7 acres controlled the drainage of everything Diane had just inherited. Nora spent Wednesday in the stone room with her professional camera. Margaret drove from Moorhead with the transfer paperwork. By 4 in the afternoon, the acquisition was executed, the textiles professionally packed, and a Laurel County property attorney had filed the parcel deed in Nora's name with the county clerk. When Diane's specialist arrived Thursday morning, the root cellar held mason jars and shelving. The stone room held cedar shelves, a bolted document case, and silence. James Alcorn's office smelled of coffee and warm paper, and the particular organized quiet of a Laurel County practice that has handled estates long enough to have seen most of what families do to each other in the weeks following a death. The meeting was Diane's request. Her specialist had found nothing of value in the root cellar, mason jars, shelving, preserved goods, and Diane had spent the days since working through Cora's papers with the systematic attention of a woman who knows something is missing and intends to locate it through sufficient thoroughness. She arrived with her own attorney and a printed estate inventory, and she described what she wanted to discuss as the incomplete documentation of the estate assets, which was the administrative version of everything she was. James Alcorn had already received, from Nora's representative, 3 documents: the filed 7-acre parcel deed, the drainage easement documentation, and a letter from the Kentucky Folk Art Center's legal counsel confirming the 2020 Provisional Acquisition Agreement and the completed transfer of 41 Ruth Vance textiles to the center's permanent collection. He presented them to Diane in that order, without commentary, placing each one on the table and waiting for it to be fully read before setting down the next. Diane read the parcel deed. She read the drainage easement. Her attorney leaned over, and they spoke quietly for 45 seconds. Then her attorney straightened and explained that the drainage easement across the house property's southern boundary created a material encumbrance on the property's development potential and would need to be disclosed in any sale. He delivered this in the tone of a man explaining something he wished he had known before entering the room. Diane picked up the Folk Art Center letter. She read it twice. Then she set it down and said, "What textiles?" James Alcorn explained that 41 works by Ruth Vance, Cora's mother, Diane's grandmother, had been transferred to the Kentucky Folk Art Center's permanent collection under a legally binding agreement Cora signed in 2020. He explained the Smithsonian's institutional interest. He explained that the appraised value at transfer was $430,000. Diane looked at Nora. Nora was sitting across the table with her hands folded, in the same position she had occupied in the second row of folding chairs at the will reading 2 weeks ago, with the same quality of stillness that Diane had never known what to do with. Diane said, "She never told me about any of this." Nora thought of the specific morning she was 6 years old, sitting in Cora's kitchen, asking what her great-grandmother's name was and staying quiet until the full answer came, while the adults in the next room talked about something else entirely. "She told me what she thought I would do with it," Nora said. She did not say anything further. She did not need to. The drainage easement was in the county record. The 7 acres were filed in Nora's name. The textiles were already in Moorhead. Everything Diane had spent 30 years managing had a layer beneath it that Cora had built and maintained in silence. And the layer was permanent, and it had always belonged to someone else. Before Diane left, James Alcorn noted that the easement's terms required Nora's written consent for any modification to the house property's southern drainage infrastructure, including utilities or access roads a development sale would require. Diane's attorney did not offer an estimate of what this meant for the property's value. He simply closed his folder. Diane Vance Howell sold the house property 16 months after the will reading, at a price reduced by the drainage easement encumbrance, to a private buyer who intended to live in it rather than develop it. The southern acreage remained agricultural. The easement caused no practical difficulty for anyone who was not trying to build something. Diane did not contest the price. She did not contest the easement. She did not speak to Nora directly for 14 months, and when she did, it was a brief, formal exchange at a cousin's wedding that both of them navigated without incident, which was the best outcome available given what had happened between them and what had not. The credit union account, $114,000, in Nora's name since the day it was opened, outside the estate and entirely untouchable by it, cleared her student loan debt in full and provided the capital deposit for a small commercial space in Lexington, where she opened a document and textile restoration studio. The charitable deduction from the Folk Art Center transfer, applied across 4 years, eliminated her federal tax liability on the credit union funds, precisely as Margaret's attorneys had projected. Cora had not simply left her money. She had thought about what the money would cost and removed the cost before Nora knew to worry about it. The 41 Ruth Vance textiles entered the Kentucky Folk Art Center's permanent collection and were exhibited in the center's main gallery 18 months later. The Smithsonian acquired 3 pieces for their permanent folk art collection at an individual price Margaret declined to disclose publicly, but which covered a substantial portion of the center's operating costs for that fiscal year. Ruth's name is in the exhibition catalogue. It is the first time it has appeared in print anywhere. The 7-acre parcel is not developed. The creek still runs through it. Nora goes there on Sundays sometimes, because Sunday is the day she learned to show up, and she has not found a reason to stop. Cora Vance spent 60 years keeping a secret that was not really a secret. It was a promise made to the granddaughter who asked her mother's name and waited for the whole answer in the particular stillness of a child who already understood that the full answer was worth waiting for. She spent 60 years making sure it would keep.